welcome everyone on behalf of Tech Connect and the Women Entrepreneurs in STEM program. It's great to see everyone out today. And thank you very much to Carla Heim from the BDC for partnering with us on this presentation. My name is Jenny. I'm the program coordinator with the Women in STEM program. So myself and Julieta Fuentes Aceituno, sorry Julieta, if I messed that up, you can correct me. We will be here to answer any questions, to monitor the questions as we go along and make sure you get the answers that you need. So feel free to write anything in the chat. And we'll be sure to share everything with our presenters and make sure your questions get answered. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pay respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. We are in the city of Lethbridge, so the city of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. So I know we're spread out, so wherever you happen to be sitting, maybe you can take a moment to acknowledge that the lands that you are sitting on as well. So before we jump into this, I just want to give you a quick introduction about the Women Entrepreneurs in STEM program and a little bit about who we are. But for some reason, there we go, it's finally moving. So we are a Southern Alberta initiative. We're delivered by Economic Development Lethbridge through Tech Connect. And we are funded through the Western Economic Diversification Canada program. So we very much appreciate their support in this project. And we do have a website that went live yesterday. So feel free to come and check us out at westem.ca because we'd love to see you there. So just to give you a little bit of a background of what Tech Connect is and how we relate. So Tech Connect offers, well, it's an incubator. It's a hub for entrepreneurs and for technology. And the Tech Connect offers entrepreneurial supports for entrepreneurs in Southern Alberta. So we work out of Tech Connect. So we both offer entrepreneurial training. We both offer business advisory supports and also linkage to entrepreneurial supports. But we also are specific in supporting women entrepreneurs and women's entrepreneurs in STEM and women entrepreneurs who are looking to pivot and use more technology in their businesses. So we are specialized training in tech, we have mentorship programs, and we are really reaching out to rural communities and Indigenous and immigrant female communities as well. So that's a little bit about who we are. So as I said, we have three kind of target audiences. So women who are already in STEM and who are interested in entrepreneurship. Women entrepreneurs who are not necessarily in the STEM field, but they're interested in exploring STEM to pivot, to innovate, to expand. Specifically women in Southern Alberta and Indigenous or immigrant women. So that is kind of our focus in the STEM program here. So today we are going to be talking about what is social enterprise. We have two different sessions today. So part one is talking about creating a B-Corp with Carla Heim from BDC. And then we're going to have an entrepreneurial panel talking about B corporations. So as I said, Carla Heim has really helped us to put together this whole session. So thank you very much, Carla. And Carla is a senior advisor of purpose entrepreneurship at the Business Development Bank of Canada, better known as the BDC, which is the only bank in Canada dedicated exclusively to entrepreneurs. She is a leading figure in the national movement entrepreneurs who use business as a force for good. For example, they create for-profit companies that help build robust communities that are inclusively prosperous and climate resilient. She is a national expert on B-Corp certification and the B Impact Assessment Tool, and serves as the BDC B-Lab Partnership Lead. B-Lab is the not-for-profit, which is the creator of the International B-Corp movement, which she will tell us much more about. Carla has 30 years experience in owning, managing, advising, and financing businesses. So she brings to entrepreneurs a single mix of hands-on experience, deep expertise, and as longstanding member of the national and global B-Corp networks, knowledge of the latest, most innovative practices. So thank you so much, Carla. And when we get to our panel of entrepreneurs, we are very fortunate to have Jillian Goltz and Nicole Monaco with us today. So Nicole is a marketing leader with over 15 years experience working in Canada, the US, and Europe. Nicole leads the marketing and communications at Chandos Construction, which is Canada's only B-Corp certified commercial builder, which is pretty amazing. So Nicole is designated a chartered marketer by the CMA and serves as the volunteer finance director for the International Association of Business Communications, Edmonton chapter. She is originally from Toronto, like me, and Nicole has called Edmonton home since 2013, where she enjoys the community, cultural, and commercial activities that are unique to Canada's most northerly big city. And Jillian Goltz is also joining us from the Ian Martin Group. And Jillian has been working with the Ian Martin Group for 3 years and is currently working as an account manager for the recruitment team out west. Ian Martin is a staffing agency that has been around since 1957, specializing specifically in engineering and IT recruitment. And in 2012, Ian Martin first certified as a B Corp and has since been awarded by B-Lab in Best for Governance and Best for Workers. Jillian also leads the committee responsible for organizing the B local community for Alberta. So we're very fortunate that everybody has been able to gather here today to share their expertise with us. So thank you so much. And now I am going to hand it over to Carla to take over.
Oh, thank you so much, Jenny. I really appreciate the introduction, and we're really thrilled to be here today. If you can just give me a second, I'm going to share my screen and get that going for everyone. All right, so hopefully everybody can hear my screen, and also hopefully everyone can hear me okay. See my screen, hear me okay, pardon me. So as I said, I'm really happy to be here this morning, and you know, my role at BDC is really about purpose entrepreneurship, which I know that the terms social entrepreneurship and purpose entrepreneurship and sometimes social purpose entrepreneurship are often interchanged. And for me, I guess my experience in this field for the past 10 years, it really for me is about purpose. And that purpose that the entrepreneur brings into his or her company really is about the impact that they can create. So it's almost beyond social. It might be a social impact, it might be an environmental impact, it might be you know, their impact on their employees. So there's lots of different ways to have impact, but it usually starts with that purpose and that fire within the entrepreneur. And so that's where I'm coming from it today. Social entrepreneurship is sometimes associated with nonprofits, and it certainly can be that bucket. For BDC and the B Corp movement, we're really focused more on the for-profit entrepreneur. And the reason why I do think that's very exciting is that I feel entrepreneurs will actually have more opportunity to have an impact if they're also running a viable business that can help them deepen their impact. So, so for today, that's sort of what I'm bringing you. And I'm sure that in the second session, you're going to talk more about social entrepreneurship and possibly nonprofits in that world as well. So as mentioned, I am with BDC. the Business Development Bank of Canada. We are the only bank in Canada exclusively dedicated to entrepreneurs. We provide financing, advisory services, and we have a VC department. We also have a tremendously exciting women entrepreneur focus. We've had that now for about, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years that we've really had a team working on that. And I actually was part of the team that put all of that together. I was the project manager on it for years. It just, the only reason why I moved off of it because I was so busy with the work that I'm doing in purpose entrepreneurship that we had to actually expand that team. So huge supporter of that. And the chairperson is Laura Diddick, and she's actually in Alberta, so she's really close to you. And the other person that's doing that work is Lisa Christensen. So I am sure that going forward, you will hear from those two folks as well. So today, I really want to talk about purpose and why we're all here today and what's happening globally that's really enforcing this trend that's happening. Then I'll tell you a little bit about B-Corp. So I'll give you the bones of it and what's happening there. And then I'm going to invite my panel members to come and join me and talk about how their companies have embraced B-Corp and what that's meant to them. So the first thing I want to talk about are these entrepreneurs. This really is a people movement. That's really what makes this whole purpose and social entrepreneurship thing work. So the first entrepreneur I want to introduce you to is Annie. Annie is an incredible woman. She was making her own cosmetics and cleaning products far before she started the Unscented company because she was allergic to fragrances. She actually came across some pretty darn good products, so she decided to create a company. And she really does have purpose and impact embedded throughout her company. What she's proving is you can have reliable cleaning products that don't have to be scented. They're refillable. She's all about the environment. She's really about the individuals that have helped build her company. And she's really focused on a very effective and reliable local supply chain, which has really helped her during COVID. The icing on the cake is that she has a huge list of local customers that are very aligned to her purpose and impact across the country. And if you ever want to purchase her products, they're in the Canadian Tire stores across Canada. That's normally where I go to get them. So she's an incredible entrepreneur that has a big vision, and she's not going to take her foot off the pedal, that's for sure. So let's meet Jeremy. I love Jeremy. He's an amazing person, and I love him because his purpose was found when he was a young child. So he's from Saskatchewan, and he was driving through Saskatchewan with his dad, and he kept seeing all of these fields on fire. And he asked his dad, you know, Dad, what are they burning? And his dad said, flax straw. And he said, oh, well, why are they burning all that? And he said, well, because it's a waste product. And Jeremy thought, that's not right. And he hung on to that vision. And he now makes biodegradable smartphones with that flax straw. And he's actually got big goals for his company, Pila. He wants to eliminate 1 billion pounds worth of waste from landfills by 2028. He's making everyday products without everyday waste. This Saskatchewan boy has been so successful, he's attracted the attention of some sustainable investors. The first one, Jay-Z. Yeah, the rapper Jay-Z. He has a fund where he only wants to invest in sustainable companies with purpose. And he invested $5 million into Pila last year. So that's pretty exciting. So these local Canadian entrepreneurs are demanding better from their companies. The next person I want to introduce you to is Milton. Milton Friedman was an American economist that back in 1970 actually said that a company has no social responsibility to the public or society. Its only responsibility is to the shareholder. A format that is really extractive and unfortunately very exclusive. We call this shareholder capitalism. And that's basically how people have run their companies for the past 50 years. But what I'm really happy to announce is that there are some new incredible leaders coming. So after 50 years, I can introduce you to Emmanuel Faber. Emmanuel is the head of Danone International. Danone is the yogurt company that you see quite often in the grocery stores. They are a massive multinational company. They are really focused on sustainability. They are committed to a sustained and sustainable, resource-conscious value creation business model. They do this through their governance. They do this through their loan terms and conditions. They do this through their commitment to B-Corp. And they currently have 20 B-Corps under their umbrella. But their goal is to have all of Danone certified as a B-Corp. So change is here, and I'm really happy to announce that. So the next thing I want to talk about is customers. Customers are demanding better. Unilever is one of the largest product companies in the world with over 400 brands. They're huge. Only 28 of those brands are considered their sustainable living brands. And a lot of these brands are B Corp certified, or companies like that Dove that are doing a lot for women. So they have some purpose behind what they're doing. They also tend to be quite trustworthy and transparent. So back in 2016, Unilever actually announced that their sustainable living brands are outperforming their other brands by 30%. And just a year later, it was 46%. And earlier this year, Alan Jope, the CEO, announced that their sustainable living brands, still at only 28 companies of the 400, are outperforming their other brands by 69%. And they are responsible for 75% of the company's growth. I don't know if I can give you a clearer example of what customers are looking for. People are demanding better. So 80% of global consumers agree that business must play a role in addressing societal issues. And 86% of employees believe it's important their own employer is responsible to society and the environment. So people are demanding better in everything that they're doing. Investors are also demanding better. This is Larry. Larry is the CEO of BlackRock Investments. They're one of the largest investment firms in the world at about $7.1 trillion. And Larry, 3 years ago, wrote an open letter to their 500 CEOs. And he said that if your organization is not creating some type of value creation beyond just shareholder return, we might not do business with you anymore. That was a very bold statement to make. And even Larry's peers were like, Larry, what are you doing? But he held true to that. And the next letter was exactly the same. And his most recent letter focused on climate action. And in fact, earlier this year, he actually put 244 companies on watch because he didn't feel they've done enough progress on climate issues. Now, Larry probably really cares about the environment, and he sees the need of really focusing on stakeholder capitalism, so everybody matters in this journey. But he's also a shrewd businessman, and he can see what's happening globally. And if any one of his investments are actually ignoring their employees or damaging the environment or have a really toxic supply chain, he knows that's not a good investment going forward. Because as a society, we're not tolerating that anymore. A year ago, the Business Roundtables, which is a lobbying group of CEOs from America, they make up about 200 within that lobbying group, and they are the largest companies in America. Think Google, Apple, Walmart, they actually came out in the summer of 2019 and they made a public statement to say that it is no longer okay for business to move forward on shareholder return only, that they must start considering all stakeholders. So this was obviously music to my ears and what I like to hear, because if we start moving these larger companies to that space, you know, the better our society is going to become overall. Now they have a lot of work to do, and this year has been challenging, but I think this year during COVID has actually not taken away from that focus, because during COVID, there's almost been a heightened public reaction to consumer awareness and obviously local business. And it's been kind of interesting because it was an unscheduled event that has allowed us to kind of see this global experiment on what real climate action could look like, on the effect of employees and communities and how that is so darn important. And also the importance of a local supply chain as well. So these things really came to light over the past 6 months, and they're not going away. So really and truly, Annie and Jeremy and Emmanuel, they are the leaders that actually get why all of these things are important to an organization's success. And they all use B-Corp as their measurement and tool to track their purpose and impact. And in fact, thousands of entrepreneurs use it worldwide, and tons of 288 in Canada use it here. And BDC, the organization that I work with, is actually a certified B Corp as well. So I feel pretty blessed to work for that organization. So that gives you a little bit of a context of why we're all here today and why this is such an important topic. Now I want to introduce you to what this B Corp thing is all about. Sometimes people aren't really sure, so I really like to clarify what this movement is all about. So over the last 20 years, we've really focused on good products. We've had LEED certification, certified organic apples. You know, it actually was certifying either a process or a product or that type of thing. It never really looked at the overall company. So in the 21st century, we're demanding good companies. Because you might have a certified organic apple, but if you're not treating your employees well, that's not okay either. So B Corp actually looks holistically at all of that. It's one of the best health checks you can have for your business. So there's 3 steps to certification. 1 is commitment. So you have to be an entrepreneur that actually believes in this, that has purpose and impact in your vision. This certification is super hard to fake. It's way too rigorous. It's way too difficult. So you actually have to be leading your companies that way. The second thing you would do is complete the B Impact Assessment. It's a performance assessment that you have to score 80 out of 200 points for. The third is you have to change your articles of incorporation to consider all stakeholders, not just shareholder return. So who can certify? Any for-profit company of any size. So anything from a legal structure of a sole proprietor all the way up to a multinational, or a co-op, or a CCC, which is a company out of BC. Any of those companies can certify in any industry and any geography. Before you certify, you do have to be 18 months old, simply because you do need your first set of financial statements. But what I'd like to leave everybody with today, everybody can be B Corp-ish. You don't have to certify in order to get the benefits from this movement. Certification is kind of like the Olympians. So they really want to achieve that and they're going to invest something in it. I highly encourage it to everyone, but you don't have to. And from my experience over the past 20 years, Canada is full of B Corp-ish entrepreneurs. And that's something that I'm really proud to share outside of Canada. And you can do this by using this B impact assessment that I mentioned. The assessment is available to all entrepreneurs. It's free and confidential. It's benchmarked against another 70,000 users worldwide. So you're getting feedback on where your company is sort of standing. There are 86 different assessments. So when you get started, you input your location, your size, your industry, and it will put you into a specific stream of that assessment. So it's very customized to your own experience. Within the assessment, there are tools and guides and examples and reports available. It's full of amazing information, policies, procedures, tips, guidance, etc. And remember when you're going through the B Impact assessment, because it is rigorous, it is daunting, that only measure what matters to you most. Really focus on the things that matter to your operations and matter to who you are. Perfection is not the goal. The B Impact assessment score was actually set over 14 years ago when the founders of B Lab, the nonprofit organization, went to over 2,000 companies, and they said, you know, can you fill the application out and just let us know where you stand? And what they found was that companies were just totally traditional shareholder return type companies would score between about the 30 and the 50 mark. A company that maybe had a strong corporate social responsibility report every year maybe would be between the 50 and the 70 mark. But companies that really embedded sustainability and purpose throughout the organization, they scored around the 80 mark. And that's why the bar was set at 80. Because I'm sure when I said you have to score 80 out of 200 points, you thought, oh, I got that. That's not even 50%, right? That'll be easy. But it is actually quite hard to get the 80 points. Currently, right now, on average, traditional companies are scoring around 55 in the assessment. And on average, when somebody actually certifies for the first time, they're anywhere between 80 and 90 points. So it's quite often, some people are like, I only scored 80, I shouldn't submit. Actually, that's amazing. So if you're at the 80 mark, you're doing great. And what most people feel about the B Corp movement is it's not a destination. It really is a journey about improvement. So here's 3 well-known B Corps that have over time continued to improve their score. And that's, they use the B Impact assessment as that strategy tool. A quick note on the legal framework. It is important to the founders that basically the legal aspect is sort of locked in. It's like a mission lock for the organization. And it puts people on notice, like shareholders or anybody else dealing with the organization, that they're going to consider all stakeholders. So they might decide to pay a living wage. They might decide to use a process that's more environmentally friendly, because they're responsible to all stakeholders. And it's not just about shareholder return. It does not limit you in terms of dividends or making tons of money. You're still more than welcome to do that in this movement. But what you're doing is you're thinking about how you're doing that. So overall, there's actually almost 36,000 B Corps worldwide. This really is a global movement in 150 different industries and 75 countries. As I mentioned before, we currently have 288 certified B Corps in Canada, and we're one of the largest communities outside of the US. So that's my presentation for you today. I hope that scoped what we're talking about today and the reason why I'm such a proponent of B Corp and the B Impact Assessment for business. But now I'd like to introduce my panel, and we'll go from there. Are there any questions before we get started? You're okay? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can see the 3 of us. Excellent. So I'd like to introduce Jillian and Nicole and welcome them to join me. Nicole, I don't see you yet. Are you off? Okay, I think that's just you are off. Thank you. You were on my second screen. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I have to say that Shandos and Ian Martin Group, I absolutely adore their companies. They really are leaders in their space. They're innovative, they're creative, they're inclusive. And so it really brings me joy that you can actually join us this morning and share your stories. I'd like to start with what makes your organization a social purpose company? What makes your organization shine that way? Jillian, maybe you can share first.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Carla. And good to be here. Hi, everybody. I think for us, so Ian Martin Group, we're a staffing agency, and we've been a staffing agency for a long time. But I think with when we certified, we kind of certified in 2012, even though we've been around since like 1957. And so for us, that was a bit of a different transition for us. But our mission as a staffing agency is to connect people in meaningful work. And for us, because like we're working with different individuals and like helping them to find careers and jobs and things like that, we wanted to kind of expand that as much as possible. And so and some different ways that we've done that is, and we also recruit for engineering and IT specifically. Like those are the industries that we focus on. And so for us, couple of our, try and expand on who can we provide meaningful work to. And so that includes like women in the areas of IT and engineering. And like when I'm looking at different candidates for different things, like working with my recruiters and like how can we elevate women in that way. And working as well, we have a couple different partners. So we actually, we've partnered with the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business, the CCAB, on a couple different things in terms of helping to provide mentorship for entrepreneurs who are Indigenous, so help them in that way. As well as another one of our partners is Windmill Microlending, which provides microloans for immigrants who want to upgrade in terms of education or start their own business. And so with Windmill, I've actually been able to work with them in terms of helping people who they have the education now and to help them find roles as well. And so, yeah, just kind of taking that idea of like, how do we provide people with work and expanding on that as much as possible is kind of our main goal, I would say. So, yeah.
Sorry, that's a pretty awesome goal. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Ian Martin Group also provides WeWork, which is a staffing aspect to the bcorporation.net website. So you can also check that out as well. So I would like to ask the same question of you, Nicole. What makes Shandos shine? I know that the list is long, so.
Thanks, Carla, and thanks for having me. And hi, everybody. It's nice to be here today. And great intro, Carla. Actually, I just thought I would say that one of the entrepreneurs you had in your presentation, Rami from Cotton. I'm actually wearing a Cotton t-shirt today. They're a Canadian brand and doing some amazing things. So I encourage everybody to check out the Canadian B-Corps and learn more about them. I did prepare some slides, so I thought this was a pretty big question, and I wanted to just, dig in a little bit and share some of how we sort of look at being a purpose-driven organization. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to try and get this into presentation mode. So if you could just bear with me for a second here. Okay, and can you, one sec, sorry. 1 second. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Let's just get that back up. So Shandos became B Corp certified in 2016. And it was something that the organization, I've been with Chandos since 2019, but something the organization was really looking for a way to sort of validate the work that they were already doing. And so the B-Corp certification was a really nice fit. And sort of one of the things about being a purpose-driven organization, I think, is looking at the business model, as Carla mentioned. And so this is Peter Diamandis, founder of Singularity University. You know, he's said before that the world's greatest social problems are often the world's greatest business opportunities. And I think that's a great quote to sort of summarize how we approach being a purpose-driven organization and what it means to us. And so recently we relaunched our brand because we had so many different initiatives in regards to social purpose. We really wanted to find a way to sort of summarize and succinctly incorporate them into our organization. And so we took this approach of sort of looking at, what does Chandos do? You know, we're a construction company, we build commercial projects, schools, you know, we don't do residential construction in the traditional way. So what do we do? Why do we exist? And then what does the world need? And where can we where are we intersecting? What are we doing to sort of make the world a better place? And that's really where that existing business model approach and how our existing model is actually benefiting society. Those are the things that we really focused on. And I think, you know, that's a little bit, being a social purpose organization is a little bit different than being a social enterprise. And that's kind of how I look at it, is we're a for-profit organization, but we really look for those areas where we can make society, essentially make a positive impact on society. And so I'll talk a little bit about our missions as part of our brand, because it really does, I think, help articulate what makes us a social purpose organization. But before I do that, I just wanted to share a quick slide to talk about our B-Corp certification, because we're really proud of our progress and our journey. Because, you know, we started, we were in the 80s when we first scored, and our recent certification is 107.4. And I think, you know, looking at this slide, you know, Carla talked about Danone. I mean, she talked about Ben and Jerry's. There's some incredible organizations here, and we actually use our B-Corp certification as, you know, central to our sort of purpose-driven approach, and it's very important to us. And we have aspirations to really move further along on that curve and get closer to Patagonia. And so that was really important when we looked at our brand. And so our brand, like I said, B-Corp is central. When I get to our missions, we'll talk a little bit about that, but ultimately our purpose is to build a better world. That is what we want to do, partnering with our trade partners, clients. We want to be the most collaborative and innovative builder in North America by 2030. And we have 4 missions, and I'm going to spend some time talking about those. And our values are inclusion, collaboration, ingenuity, and innovation. And so that's really what drives our organization forward. A lot of those things are tied closely in with the B-Corp principles. And our missions, I think this is where we really start to articulate why and how we are a purpose-driven organization. So we have 4 missions. They're very outwardly focused. So our first mission is around our company, you know, and we are 100% employee owned. We are B-Corp certified, and we really do believe in balancing people and profit. And so those are things we want to continue to grow and develop as we move forward into the future. Then we looked at, so our company is sort of the sphere of influence that we have the most impact on. And then as we get out into the circle, you know, it becomes harder to make change, and also, you know, our influence sort of starts to get a little smaller, but still very important. So the industry, you know, we really believe in collaboration and inclusion. And so we really want to work with the Canadian construction industry to make it a more collaborative and inclusive place for all kinds of people. And in our organization as well, we strongly believe in diversity and inclusion, and we are working on some things to move the needle in our own diversity and inclusion. Community is another important mission for us. And so We really believe in social procurement. I'll give a couple examples. And also the planet is very important. And so we have a great waste diversion record and approach going forward. So just quickly, I mentioned diversity and inclusion. We're developing a roadmap. And so this is an area, so B Corp, really breaks down, if you spend some time looking at it, it breaks down into different categories, and D&I is one of them. And it's one of the areas where we actually can make some improvements. And so we're taking a very formal approach. And this is sort of a guide we're using to develop our own roadmap. We're sort of in the aware applied stage. We're a little bit in applied, mostly in aware. We really want to move up to operational, ideally. And I think we're kind of looking at like 2025, 2026 to get there. And then social procurement. So social procurement is this idea of, using your purchasing dollars for good. And it's something that's very important to our organization. And so for us, it's about in social purchasing. So that would be like, where we buy our coffee from, or, are we buying recycled paper products? And then inclusive hiring is a term we sort of are using. It's more around labor and people. So in our industry, we often, work with temporary agencies or staffing agencies, or even, a lot of our work is delivered through trade partners. And so it's this idea of, who we choose to work with. And we work a lot with social enterprises who help people facing barriers to employment. And we actually bring them in to work on our projects, give them a chance. And recently, really proud of the fact that our Vancouver team has hired a social enterprise worker full-time into our organization. And so this is something very important, and we've developed a directory. We're really trying to fast track this idea of spending our money with organizations that do good in the world. I'm so really excited and proud of that. And then again, we talked about waste diversion. So it's something that we want to continue to build and grow our environmental commitments. And so, in Q2 2020, this is our recent, we track these metrics every month and report them out. So 76% of all waste created, and there's a lot of waste created in construction, was diverted through our Chandos operations. We want to be at 80%, and we want to be achieving 100% of projects diverting waste. It gets challenging in some small communities, but those are some of our goals. And then, I just want to talk a little bit about the governance piece of B Corp. And we have a board of directors, even though we're a worker-owned business, we have a board of directors from a governance point of view. And so we actually are going to start recording and reporting some of these metrics. So obviously through the B Corp assessment, we have to, get our hands on a lot of this information, but every quarter we want to be very transparent. We're going to put metrics in place around our diversity. We want to be tracking the growth of that collaborative industry work that we're doing. We want to be tracking the social procurement. We're going to start tracking the money we spend with these businesses, and really reporting this up to the board and having a transparent conversation. And then I know we're going to talk about it, I think maybe later we might chat a little bit about this, but I wanted to also just mention that we are employee ownership, and this is where actually Chandos is sort of beginnings of being a social purpose organization started. There's 200 people who have shares in the company, and our employee ownership model is very important. We were Best for Workers for a few years in a row with B Corp. So that's a little bit about what makes us a social purpose organization, and I'll stop sharing now.
Well, see, I told you that they had a lot to share. They really are holistically looking at absolutely everything their company can do to have purpose and impact. It's absolutely incredible. Thanks, Nicole. So obviously, as I mentioned, this is a movement about people. And operationally, from a company perspective, when you look at B Corp and the B Impact Assessment, we're looking at governance, employees, community, supply chain, environment. All of these things are important, and you can see how they're embedding something in every single one of those buckets. Now, flipping it to more of how it feels to be an employee of an organization, like what has B Corp meant to you? I know for me, I'm just really proud to work for an organization that is doing so well. And we've been best for the world around employees and governance, for example. It means something to me to work for a company that's got purpose and impact. And I know it's one of the reasons why I stay engaged. It's why I'm still with BDC after 15 years. And we were B Corp-ish way before we were actually certified as a B Corp 6 years ago. So, you know, that's really been a driver for me to stay here. How about Jillian? How has it affected you? I mean, you joined Ian Martin Group while they were a B Corp. How has that affected you?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, Carla. I think so. I used to work for an organization that wasn't a B Corp before I came to Ian Martin. And I actually, like, when I first, like, and it was more so like I wanted to work for an organization who like had that additional purpose and whose values like were more holistic. And I didn't even know what a B Corp certification was when I first started with Ian Martin, and I learned fairly quickly. But I think it's yeah, like it's such like it makes a huge difference, and it's such like a definitely like a guide. Like it's the assessment, like it's not just something that organizations do. It actually creates a large amount of accountability for the organization, which I think helps drive the different activities. And so I think from my perspective, it's really helped me to see that there can be a different way of doing business, and that it's successful. I know, like, if it weren't, like, I just think about like what we've just been, like what the world has been through in the past few months. And I think if it weren't for our certification, like guiding a lot of our actions as an organization, we would not have been able to pivot as well as an organization, and to change different behaviors as quickly as we did, to match what was currently happening in the world. And so I think, yeah, like it definitely, like what you said before, like I want to come to work now. Like I know so many people and they're like, ah, crap, like it's Monday, like I don't want to go in the office, like I like working from home, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, no, like I actually enjoy going to work and like doing all these like additional like things on top of my job, because like I want to be there. Like some of like the people I work with, like they know, like we have very like close like relationships, and like somebody like, oh, like need a professional kind of thing, and we don't. Ian and Martin were very open with each other, so sometimes it gets kind of weird, but yeah, like it's just this very holistic view of an organization, I think, is what really yeah, is why I appreciate it. So yeah,
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, you can bring your full self to work. That's,
yeah.
you know, that's the beauty of it, right? So yeah. And Nicole?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a lot of what Jillian said really resonated with me too. And I worked for, actually most of my career, I worked for publicly traded companies. So I worked for Fin in Canada and for Intertech, which is traded on the London Stock Exchange, big companies. And I mean, doing great things. Like Finning was an incredible place to work because I learned so much, you know, working with Caterpillar, which is a $50 billion organization. But, you know, you really see the shareholder driven approach. And I lived that. And it's very short-term results focused. And so while it really provides a lot of, you know, I learned a lot. There's a lot you can do. There's a lot of, you know, I learned a lot of technical stuff. I learned a lot about business. I learned a lot about working in a publicly traded organization. You know, there was something missing for me. And so when I found out that Chandos was B Corp certified, I was, you know, so impressed. And really, that was a huge draw for me to join the organization. And I knew what B Corp was about. I mean, full disclosure, my cousin is one of the founders of Cotton. So, and they've been B Corp certified for a while, Mackenzie. So she works really closely with Rami, but so I kind of knew about it from her. And yeah, and I just really, it's that idea that, we have a responsibility to each other, to the planet, and why wouldn't we do the right thing? And we can. And so to work to see a company that, of course is focused on making money, but wants to make money in a responsible way it's just really great. And I couldn't agree more with Jillian. Like, I come to work every day just so happy to be working for an organization that really has values that align with mine. I don't think I've ever been happier in a company, to be honest. And I think a lot of that has to do with this culture and this purpose-driven approach. And lastly, I would agree with Jillian around the framework and that sort of guide like that. I really appreciate that, because it's sort of like it is like a guiding light, right? The B Corp framework, it's not just a way of thinking, it's a way of doing. It's very action oriented, and it's very much about, and the assessment really does provide all of the sort of framework that you need to actually navigate the space. And even if you don't necessarily pursue the certification, it really lays out how you can sort of incorporate these values into your business. And I do really appreciate that, because it's a reminder of just what we need to do and that accountability. So I think my reasons are very, very similar to Jillian's.
Oh, that's great. It's always nice for me to hear it. It's just so inspiring that we can live in a better world and bring our full selves to work. I think that's so important. So one of the major topics right now with Black Lives Matter, with equity, justice, diversity, inclusion, these are really, really major topics for all of us right now. And, even women in STEM, why is that so important, right? We've got to elevate the underserved, those that haven't had the equal opportunity. And that is really important as a society right now. It's a really sensitive and difficult topic. There's a lot of shame, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of confusion out there. And it's been interesting because B Corp started really leaning into this about 4 or 5 years ago. And they ran what they called an inclusive economy challenge, which really was about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They hadn't even added on the justice piece yet, but the justice piece is so important. And we started leaning into it, and it was uncomfortable at first. It really was. But I do find that we've had some amazing leadership in this area via the B Corp movement. And I know that both of your organizations has played a really critical role in elevating that conversation. I mean, Jillian, obviously you've been really, I know Ian Martin Group has been really focused on equity in terms of hiring practices, right? And of course, Nicole, you are doing so much in the space of, hiring people with barriers, increasing the number of women that you have within Shandos, et cetera, because not historically, construction is not historically filled with women, that's for sure. So I'd love for you to provide everyone a bit of context around your experience and what your organizations are doing.
I'll start, no problem, I'll jump in. So I think this is not, yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. And it's something that I think we just really need to be very diversity and inclusion and equity and anti-racism and gender equity. It's something we have to keep top of mind, because I think you know, and as an organization, we are very vocal about talking about diversity and inclusion, and we've made some really great strides with regards to women in construction. But let's face it, the construction industry is not very diverse, and so we really want to be a leader and really, you know, demonstrate that we can be an inclusive and diverse organization, and that construction is a place where all people are welcome. I mean, it's, you know, it's a very interesting industry to work in. And so, you know, there's lots of things we're doing. I'll just share a couple stories, I think. And it, you know, the hiring people with barriers. So we, you know, and it's not just hiring people with barriers, but we really want to partner with organizations and social enterprises that, you know, when we do need temporary labor, or, you know, we're looking for contract labor for our project sites, you know, we really want to make sure that we're partnering with organizations that are working with people who are underrepresented in the construction industry. And that's one of the ways we can bring diversity into our industry and our company. And so we work with this organization in Vancouver called Embers, and they are, you know, a downtown East Side based, community-based organization that really helps people who have, you know, faced barriers in their lives, a range of barriers, sort of come back into the workforce. And recently they were awarded the Governor General's Award for the work that they do, just very, very recently. And so we're really proud of that work, and we want to do more of that work, and we want to educate our trade partners about, you know, what they can do. And so I think not only can we have an impact, but because we are so connected in with so many other companies, I mean, 10% of the work that gets done on our projects gets done by Chandos, but the rest is done by other organizations. And so we really feel that one of the things we want to start doing more of is educating our trade partners and creating some accountability in our supply chain. And that's something that B-Corp talks a lot about. And we've looked at that and sort of said, like, I think we can do some of that. So that's on the horizon for us. And that's more emerging. But as far as women in construction, you know, there's, I think on average, like 8% of the construction industry is women. We're proud of the fact that we're over 20% in our organization, but we look at all roles. And so, you know, 11% of our senior team is women. I think about 11% of our field team is women. We have work to do on our project management team, but we're looking at it, we're measuring it, because we want to be better. We really would love to be 50% women. Ultimately, we want to reflect Canadian society. And I'll just share this really brief story because I think it's so cool. So we have a civil construction job here in Edmonton, and it's run by a woman superintendent. Her name's Amy, and the site actually has gender parity. So of all the Chandos employees, 50% are women and 50% are men. And it's a heavy concrete site. And the team was so proud that they were able to coordinate an all-woman concrete pour. And I mean, that is something probably never been done in Canada before in the construction industry. And it was just amazing to see that this entire team, you know, this entire Chandos project team really got behind this and wanted to make this happen. And so it's been a great sort of, you know, I think, reminder that this is something that's important across our organization, and we are making traction in changing that mindset.
Yeah, talk about elevating. That's very inspiring. Those are the stories we have to share, that's for sure. Jillian?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, I mean, being a staffing industry, like this comes up all the time with us, and it's interesting. Like, I mean, we're completing RFPs for different clients, and like the question about diversity and inclusion comes up quite a bit. But I think what we're trying to really focus on is like, how do we, as a B Corp, like how do we take that like one step further? And so we have been actually, so E. Martin's like a self-managed organization. We don't have managers. We just have different groups of people that self-organize and manage themselves. And so we actually had like a reading group for the entire company. It's interesting how there's been individuals that have been able to bring people along with them, because traditionally, like, we were a staffing agency before we were a B Corp. And so that transition has been interesting. But we started a reading group for How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Kendi. And so that's been an interesting way for the entire organization to move forward as an organization in that way, because I think sometimes it can be tricky trying to bring everyone forward together. And so now we've been doing some Jedi work around that, but also as part of that too, it's also, I think, looking at what are different ways that we can find talent for our clients, as opposed to the traditional like job boards of like Indeed or LinkedIn or different things like that. How do we work with our clients and provide them with candidates and say, hey, like, it's a little bit different, but like that doesn't change anything. And so I know we have a couple different partners that we're working with around that I kind of talked about before, but I think like a specific really cool example is one of our clients. I don't remember exactly what the role was, but they were recruiting for a particular role, and one of our account managers was able to work with one of our partners, Autism Speaks, and recruit an individual who the organization recommended. And now that individual is working for a very large like oil and gas client in Canada, which was really cool to see how we were able to draw on our partners and maybe look at some non-traditional sources of talent that people wouldn't typically think of. And I know working with our partner, Windmill Microlending, working with immigrants and trying to provide them with different sources of employment and different things like that. So yeah, I think for us, like, the big focus is, and like working with different clients too, who I know we did some work with Danone actually around recruiting and stuff like that as well. So trying to, pivot. That was shift and pivot together. But in terms of, like, who are our clients and what is the talent that we're sourcing, and like, how does it look different kind of thing. So how can we do it differently based on, B Corp.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it's a lot of work. It really is. It's not a simple topic. And, I think in Canada, we sometimes think, oh, we're better than the US. And that's one of those thoughts that maybe doesn't serve us as well. We've got work to do here as well. We have an upcoming summit coming up. We've done it. We actually started it with Shandos 3 years ago, and we put together this Enlightened Economy Summit with MacEwan University. Shandos BDC was the first one, and we've muddled through, and now we've continued it on for the past, this will be our 3rd year. This year it's virtual, and we do have, the keynote speaker is Dr. Alonda Green, because she's with B Lab and the head of diversity and inclusion there. An amazing speaker, she really is so engaging. So I did share the enlightenedeconomy.net website with you in case anybody wants to expand on this topic. And I know that this is going to be talked about a lot in the Enlightened Economy Summit this year. So again, virtual, so anybody can attend. So thought I would share it. Thank you so much for your thoughtful comments on this. So shifting a little bit, what's unique about each of your organizations? Because I know actually you both have something that's quite unique. You've sort of touched on it a bit. So Nicole, you're worker owned, and of the B Corps in Canada, you're 288. You're one of 3. So it's not that popular, a little bit more popular in construction, but can you tell me about worker ownership and why that's so important in the construction industry and how that's motivated your staff?
Yeah, I didn't know that, Carla. Thanks for sharing. I didn't know we were one of 3 of the 280 B Corps. So yeah, it's you're right, it is more common in construction, but there is a big difference between our worker ownership model and some of our competitors. And I think that's what we sometimes we need to really talk about, because we actually, so our ownership model started, oh gosh, in the 80s. So we were founded in 1980. Our founder is still involved in our business. He sits on our board. And that employee ownership began in the 80s. But when Tom Reddle, who is our current CEO, when he joined, and after, I guess, maybe I think when he took the reins from Dan, he really started looking at that ownership model, and he knew there was something there that was special. And he went to Mondragon in Spain, which is one of the largest worker cooperatives in Europe, maybe in the world, I'm not sure, but they, and he wanted to learn about their sort of approach. And they are a true like worker co-op. We are not a worker co-op. We are worker owned. And so he spent time and came back, and from what he learned, some really important things happened in our organization. So we went from maybe a more exclusive worker ownership model where not everybody could buy shares, to a very inclusive model. So everybody, every salary employee plus every hourly employee can now be an owner of the company. And that is really unique. A lot of the worker, employee owned companies that we hear about are a little more selective in who can actually buy shares. So that's important. The other is that we have a single class of voting shares. So there are no like executive shares who get, a different type of or vote, and some non-voting shares. Every shareholder gets a vote. And so that's an important difference. And then the other thing that really contributes to our B Corp approach is that 60% of our organization is not owned by executives. So of our ownership, less than 40% are within the executive ranks. And I think it's really talks to just the culture and the fact that our ownership model is very inclusive and distributed throughout the organization. And so I think that definitely sets us apart from some of the other employee-owned companies in construction, but I don't know enough about those other two. I'll probably, I'd love to learn more about those other two, Carla, if you could share.
I will, for sure. And I know it's had an effect on your employees. I know that, and I don't want to paraphrase the story, but during downturns, especially in Alberta, it's a very up and down economy. The difference is that your entire organization was working to move you guys forward in a really invested way. And I think that is very different from a normal organization.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of, we are all working towards the same goal, right? And we all sort of have to think about, the future of the company, and not just the sort of immediate pain, but really, making decisions that are going to benefit everybody in the longer term. And that really, that decision-making approach and that model is very much embedded into all levels of the organization as far as making decisions. And the other thing that's pretty unique about our company is that we have a shared leadership model. So Tom is going to be transitioning to a different role, but so the people that report to Tom are the COO, the president, and the CFO, and they are equals and they work together. So we are actually led by 3 people. And this is a very unique, very sort of progressive approach to leadership, this shared leadership model. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting. I'm so, fascinated by this, and it works so well. And we actually have rolled it out in one of our districts. So our district leadership, one of them is led by a shared leadership where there's 2 people that have the same accountability for running the district. And so I think it just, again, speaks to that sort of worker ownership, collaborative decision-making model in the company.
Yeah, super interesting. And that's a good segue into Ian Martin Group, Jillian. You mentioned this before, the the way that you're set up for self-managed. I'm fascinated with this way of management. So we'd love for you to share what that's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So our company, we're privately owned. So our owners are actually husband and wife, and he's the CEO. But about 2 years ago, we started kind of this group where we were like, what would it look like if Ian Martin was self-managed? And what that basically means is there's no hierarchy in the organization. It's all completely flat. The one exception to that is our CEO has what we refer to as the power of veto. So if there's something that is going like terribly wrong and nobody is like holding that person accountable or shutting this down, he ultimately can say, no, like, we can't, that can't happen, kind of thing. But that hasn't happened yet, because what we did, and I think sometimes when people hear the term self-managed, it kind of like it's like, oh my gosh, like, how do you do that kind of thing? And it's been hard, but the organization has a lot of different like processes that people have come up with together in place to kind of take on that role that typically like a manager would have. And so, for example, when somebody wants to like take on a new role, we have what we call a role advice process. And so that rarely does the CEO ever provide input into those. It's usually a group of advisors within the company who's advising this person on, I think you should move into this role. I think you should leave the company is sometimes an option, and they can take a package and leave, for example, if they feel that that's where the advice is going. But what's interesting about it is we often, when we talk about our self-management within the organization, it's this very strong, what we refer to as radical responsibility and very high level of accountability for everybody within the organization. But I think the B-Corp also fits very nicely into that because everybody feels like they have like a part in the organization. Like we often say is like, pretend that this is your organization that you're helping to own and run. And so when it comes to making decisions and things like that, people rarely make decisions like in a vacuum. It's on the advice of others. And I think, that level of accountability, it's a hard thing. Like it can be built over time. I firmly believe it can be. But sometimes the process can be hard. Like we've had like people who have left the organization because they're like, this is too much for me to handle. I have a hard time functioning in this different level of management. And I mean, they've left on good terms and like all is well there. But I think it's really been beneficial to us as an organization because no longer when you're making a choice, and especially right now with things moving fairly quickly, you don't have to wait for like approval from somebody else in like a higher up position than you. You can say, okay, I'm going to follow this process and make this decision and to help benefit the organization. And so from that perspective, it's really helped us to move fast in different situations that traditionally I think would be more difficult to navigate. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. You know, and I think both of these examples are just examples of how B Corps innovate. They're the most innovative companies that I know. And it's not about digital. It's not about these kinds of things. It's about being innovative with people practices because they're challenging the way we've done it always historically. And they're experimenting with these new platforms. And obviously good results, very good results. So thank you for sharing both of those. My last official question before we open it up to everybody for questions for our panel is obviously, I don't think we can leave here without talking about COVID and how it has affected our businesses. I know at BDC, we got on our online banking, we got more requests in 2 weeks than we would get in 3 years. So we were absolutely inundated with requests for working capital and assistance during COVID. And we knew that it was so important for BDC to respond very, very quickly. And so we actually ended up with having almost the entire company became reserve team on the online financing team to get through this volume. And it took us about 3 months. But, you know, what I was proud about our organization is that we'd never experienced this before, and we certainly did not plan for it. But everybody jumped on board. Decisions were made quickly. Things happened quickly. Mistakes were made because, unfortunately, we had to move so quickly. But we did it all together. And I was actually really proud of this. Like, we ended up adding over 350 people to this reserve team, and how everybody worked together to get through the backlog and respond as quickly as we could. So that was sort of BDC's perspective, and we are still in a position where we are trying to help as many entrepreneurs as possible. But it's been a really difficult time, that's for sure. But that's the role we played during COVID, and we had to prioritize and really work hard to make sure we're getting back to entrepreneurs, because that is our role. So it became really important. So that's a little bit about our story. And maybe Jillian, do you want to go next and tell what you have been up to?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I think, and I've mentioned this multiple times because it's true, but I think our self-management model has really helped us during this time. I know, so typically speaking, in August, we'll get together as an organization and we'll come up with like our goals for the year. And that's kind of what guides how we function as an organization moving into the new fiscal year. But approximately in March, when the pandemic really hit, we actually had a group who were like, okay, like we're in very different times right now. Like these goals are totally like very different than like what we're managing on a day-to-day basis. And so we actually had a group who they basically we got together, we're like, hey, if anybody wants to provide input in this, let us know. And so we got together a group of stewards, and we rewrote our goals for the year and re-released them out to the organization to help direct us in terms of like how we function as an organization. And I know like we are typically speaking, and I think it was really interesting because I mean like I've heard stories about a lot of different staffing agencies, unfortunately, like in the industry, who have had to let people go. And we like had very minimal layoffs, both internally and externally, which was amazing. And we also really figured worked as in our different teams as an organization and figure out how, because traditionally we're engineering and IT, but what are the industries right now that we can move into and pivot as a team? And so we were looking at like healthcare. We were looking at, Ian Martin has a branch for small and medium-sized businesses. So we were like, how do we help these smaller organizations? We were in the province of Ontario. We were working with the government in terms of like support workers and nurses and recruiting. And we had never worked in healthcare before. And we're like, okay, like we can do this. And like it was, and did a bunch of, we actually had with the government of Ontario as well, we recruited an entire like division of like call center people. And then not only that, we're able to like provide them with like laptops and set them up for that in a very short period of time. And also just working with other organizations, like we did some work with Danone and different things like that. Basically anybody who needed help, we're here, like, and rather than just kind of being like, we're going to stick in our industry of engineering and IT, we're going to figure out how we can pivot and move and work as an organization to change that. So yeah.
Fantastic. That's so key during this time. Nicole?
Yeah, I would agree with Jillian in regards to our like worker ownership and being employee owned, and how that really helped us because of the commitment and sort of the very team centric approach to decision making, I think, and the trust that's built amongst it within our culture. And I think for us, like that was just from all levels. We really put together a task force, and for us, we couldn't have all of our workers work from home. And that was the biggest concern, is that our site workers, our sites weren't being shut down. our clients, we're in a position where we have to keep working, because the client contract demands that of us. And so for us, it was all about how do we make sure we keep our people on our site safe. That was the number one priority. And so we had a very diverse group of people from all levels of the organization come together and, establish protocols. We have really integrated into our culture this continuous improvement model. We're very agile. And so because of that, and that was something I picked up right away is when I joined the company, is that we're not afraid to try and iterate and just go and do and act. And so that was incredibly helpful in addressing COVID, because we met twice a week. We put things in place, and Tuesday we made a decision, and Wednesday it was in place. And by Thursday we were already getting feedback from the field. And so we just had this constant iteration of, what's working, how do we improve? And that was about 3 weeks from, I would say, March 15th. And by then, after that sort of 3 weeks, it was incredibly intense. But by the end of that 3 weeks, we had a really great set of best practice protocols that now we had started to stabilize. And so it was just really interesting getting there. And that allowed us, we've had incredible feedback from health authorities across the country with regards to our protocols. We put a mandatory mask protocol in place well before any provincial authority did on all of our sites. And we just, we really had to take, a lot of precautions to make sure we kept people safe. And so really proud of that record for sure.
Yeah, and I think even during the time you were so gracious that you shared those practices, and I think you held a couple seminars for other folks in the same situation, which I thought was incredible.
Thanks, Carla.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I can't thank you enough for answering all those questions. I hope that we've given you a really good perspective of what B Corp's all about, how these kind of entrepreneurs tick, what it's like to work for an organization here, how putting D&I forward is really important. So I hope we've touched on a lot of things, but I have allowed for some time so that we can have some questions from the audience. Do we have anything, Jenny?
We don't have any questions in the chat, but if anyone has any questions, you can also feel free to turn on your mic and just ask your questions. But if not, you can write them, and Julieta and I will vet them and get them out. So yeah, anyone? Well, Ferris Bueller, anyone? And if there are no questions at this time, but some come to you, please feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me, and I can get your questions out to the right people, or I'm sure you can, contact our guests here. There are a lot of links that have been shared where you can go for more information as well.
Great, yeah. So the links that I shared, just to give you some context around them, I shared with you, obviously, bdc.ca. We have tons of tools and resources on our platform. Also, our women's initiative is really front and center there. You just go to the bottom and it says, I am a woman entrepreneur, and you click there. I also shared with you the bcorporation.net website, which is where you can find a lot of information about certification. You can also find all the B Corps in Canada. So you can look them up by name, by location, or by industry. Then the next thing I sent to you was a URL for Getting to 80. Now, I do a lot of B Corp 101 workshops where I walk people through the bones of the workshop and the bones of the B Impact assessment. I do longer versions of that. If anybody wants to attend something like that, just follow me on LinkedIn, Carla Heim. Fairly easy to find me. I don't have too common of a name. But we also have a program called Getting to 80, which is 6 full days of building out your impact business model and going through the assessment as your guide. And so at the end of it, you pretty much are ready for certification because you've had all that guidance, but it's done in a cohort model because I wanted to offer something to folks that is reasonable. And so that was the best way to do it. And Decade is a consulting firm that actually delivers this. They're excellent at helping you find exactly what your purpose is and clearly defining that and looking at what your impact business model really is all about. So we do it in partnership with them. So if you're interested in something like that, I shared that link. And then finally, I shared the Enlightened Economy, which I already mentioned. So lots of tools and resources out there. If you ever have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact me directly, and I can certainly help you with your journey if you're interested in B-Corp certification, or BDC. Jillian and Nicole, any final remarks?
I'll just thank you for having me. Really great to participate in the discussion. And yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to chat, I'm happy to have a chat. Jenny can provide my information to anybody that wants to talk. So
yeah, thanks for, yeah, I appreciate being here and chatting with you all. It was a great opportunity. And yeah, same, like if anybody wants to chat further about anything I've said, I'm more than happy to, yeah, Jenny, if you want to pass my info along, I'm more than happy to do that for sure. But yeah, good to be with you all here today.
Thank you so much. This has been so amazing. I can understand the silence on the question end, because there's a lot to absorb. There's a lot of amazing things going on and a lot of amazing opportunities. So thank you so much, Carla, for putting this together, and Jillian and Nicole for participating and taking the time out of your schedules. I really appreciate this. And Nicole, I'm sorry I mispronounced Shandas at the beginning, so please, please forgive me.
it's okay, it happens all the time.
I only saw it
in our onboarding of employees, we actually have a whole pronunciation session.
I'm sure that you do. But so just thank you all so much, and thanks for everyone for participating in this session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We have lots of ways that you can reach out with us here at WeSTEM. So I will share my screen here with all of our social media. In the chat box, I gave you our email address and I gave you our website, but we're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So you can follow us and connect with us and pass along any questions that you have. So I just want to say thank you again so much, Carla, and thank you to Western Economic Diversification Canada that provides the funding that lets us have put together these kind of opportunities for information sharing and gathering. And on behalf of Economic Development Lethbridge and Tech Connect and the Women Entrepreneurs in STEM program, thank you for participating.